Thank you so much for joining us here on Live Now from Fox. I'm Andy Mack, and exactly 3 weeks ago, President Biden decided to, quote, stand down and not seek re-election. A whole lot has changed in just a very short time for the Democratic Party. I do want to put up just this, a live picture in Washington, D.C. at the White House. As earlier on today, President Biden sat down for his first real interview since exiting, explaining why that decision was made. This is a post from the Washington Times saying Biden says staying in the presidential race would have been, quote, a distraction. That is the word from the president. Let's bring into the conversation right now White House correspondent for USA Today, Joey Garrison. Thank you so much for joining us here on Live Now from Fox. And of course, calling it distraction there, both on the top of the ticket and the down ballot ticket. What did we take away from this interview this morning? What did we learn from Biden about his decision to step away?
Yeah, first of all, thanks for having me on. We kind of already knew why President Biden stepped away. Clearly, he hadn't led in the polls against Trump for the entirety of this year. He had the horrible debate performance. Robert Costa of CBS asked him, of course, today to take him into the day, July 21st, in which he did finally step down. And he pointed to being a distraction for other Senate congressional candidates, and that he would be a drag on the ticket, perhaps. He said he could still beat Trump, he believed, and there was going to be a tight race, but he wouldn't be able to, in these regular questions about his, whether he might drop out or whether he can beat Trump, and whether he has the physical, mental fitness. So, that's the answer he gave. And it is pretty striking early on as we see Kamala Harris now, Democratic nominee. I mean, the Senate candidates have been showing up to her rallies. We had Ruben Gallego the other day in Arizona, for example. You had Tammy Baldwin in Wisconsin. And so they obviously do not see Harris to be the drag the Biden was. So interesting already how much they are embracing her candidacy. Democratic Senate.
That is a very important note as we close in on the November election. I do want to ask you more about this because he called it a distraction. He called about the down ballot tickets, but there was a lot of maybe mixed feelings going into that day just a few weeks ago, short weeks ago. Plenty of people supporting him, including now the presumptive VP nominee on the Democratic side. We did see Tim Walz outside the White House kind of vouching for Biden just days before that. Maybe what do we make of it, and maybe what eventually pushed him over the edge? Was it Nancy Pelosi? Was it someone else saying, hey, maybe it's time to step aside? Do we learn anything there?
Nancy Pelosi played a pivotal role. And actually, Biden, in his remarks today in the interview with CBS, actually mentioned Pelosi by name. And I think you were going to start seeing a lot of what was being discussed privately among the Pelosi's of the world, as well as Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries, maybe start becoming public with those calls for him to drop out of the race. And once you had so many Democratic members of Congress and those leaders on record saying that they don't want Biden to continue running, I mean, he was essentially boxed in a corner and effectively forced out. This was not a decision Biden wanted to do. He wanted to serve, obviously, a second term. I mean, he also mentioned, of course, when he was elected, he had talked about passing the baton to the next generation, but he wanted that next generation to come in 2028. Once you get in the White House, there's obviously an instinct to defend your career and to continue on. He did not want to go out and really, it ended up being a blessing of sorts for Democrats that there was this early debate, unusually early. It was way back it was in June. And it showed Biden raised some serious questions about his ability to serve. And Democrats now find themselves in a much better spot than they were a month ago. And I think we can circle that debate as the reason why. I mean, again, even before that debate, you have to think about it. Biden was struggling in this campaign. It was really hard for him to convince the public to get over their concerns with his age. To look at his performance in office. He had really low approval ratings. His marks on the economy were really poor. So, this was not a very, not the position even before that debate performance that the Democrats wanted to see.
Yeah, no, the debate certainly kicked off kind of this whole circle this whole whirlwind of events that
Been a wild 5 weeks.
yeah, it's been a wild 5 weeks, a historic 5 weeks. And I do want to talk about maybe not just the past, but the future, because we talk about what's to come. And after stepping down or saying he won't seek re-election, different people, Speaker Johnson amongst them, saying that he needs to step down just based on this. But in the short time since he said he wouldn't seek re-election, he's proposed SCOTUS reforms. He's done a lot. Do we have any kind of idea what the next few months look like here as he still remains in office, still remains as president?
Yeah, and those reforms regarding the Supreme Court, those were actually already in the works before he stepped down. They've decided to go forward with them, not step down, I'm sorry, decided to not run for office. So they went ahead and moved those. I think you're going to start seeing the final 4 or 5 months of Biden's tenure here really start to turn into the administration, the White House trying to cement kind of what they think of his legacy to be. And that includes those really big pieces of legislation that passed regarding the infrastructure, the climate bill that was part of the Inflation Reduction Act. So I think they're going to really try to, use these final months to try to remind the public of what those things did and what they're, a lot of them, for example, the infrastructure law, a lot of that stuff's being built out over the next 10 years. So I think they're going to try to sort of do some victory lap type of things. Now, it's going to be interesting, though, of course, while he's trying to do that, all the attention is really going to be on Kamala Harris. And it will be interesting to see whether they do find some opportunities for Biden to be on the campaign trail to an extent. I mean, they don't want to totally offend the president, of course, but I don't think he is somebody that you're going to see at a bunch of campaign stops. I mean, he is a politically, a liability right now for Harris in many regards. So it'll be interesting to see which spots they find for him. Maybe, he has a lot of ties to Philadelphia. Maybe there can be some campaigning there. And the first day of the convention in Chicago, we are going to see what we believe will be sort of the first night of the convention will be devoted to Biden, and I think he'll be speaking there on that night. So that'll be something to watch for the president moving forward.
That's what I was going to ask you next, Joey, because we talked about his legacy, and that word certainly comes up a lot in a lot of these statements since he decided to, quote unquote, stand down. And I did want to ask you about the campaign trail, but also more specifically the DNC in Chicago, like you said there. What do we envision his role at this one, and maybe how much of a passing of the torch will there be on that Monday night in Chicago?
Yeah, I think for Democrats, it's going to be a pretty emotional first night. I mean, they looked at Biden in pretty high regard, especially for beating Donald Trump in 2020. And it took, a pretty ultimately a selfless kind of decision for Biden to decide that he needed to step down. And so I think you're going to see really the DNC highlighting kind of what they think of his top moments in office. As well as really his whole career. I mean, this is really kind of a quintessential lifelong D.C. politician that goes back over 50 years when he was first elected in the Senate from Delaware to serve here in Washington. So, I think that they're going to etch out some of that sort of legacy moments, and I think it's going to start with, Biden today in an interview with CBS was asked flatly, what do you want your legacy to be? And he said that he proved that democracy can work and operate. And I think when he says that, he is referring to those big pieces of legislation that he got passed narrowly in a divided Congress, and his defeat of Donald Trump. And if for his legacy part, going back to his decision not to run again, if he had lost to Trump after beating Trump in 2020, I think that would have been his legacy largely, was that he did defeat Trump, but then he let Trump back into the White House. I don't think he wanted that to be his legacy. And so, again, the months ahead, you're going to start seeing Biden in the White House articulate more what they want him to be thought as.
Yeah, now that will we'll see what happens in the coming months, but a lot of focus, like you said, will be on Kamala Harris and now Tim Walz, the Minnesota governor. I do want to put up this post as well because let's get into that a little bit. You were there when the governor of Minnesota said that the governors have his back in reference to Biden. That was just a few short weeks before Biden decided not seek re-election. What do we make of the pick by Harris of Walz? Because we talk a lot, and Biden did earlier on today in this interview about Pennsylvania, his kind of home state there, not going for Josh Shapiro as the VP pick. What do we make of this, and does maybe Biden have any opinion on that?
Yeah, I think ultimately they thought Tim Walz is a good messenger for those blue collar Midwest states, whereas yes, Shapiro could have been crucial in Biden's efforts to win Pennsylvania, and that's really the most critical battleground state for Democrats of the entire country. But they think having somebody from Middle America, somebody who's sort of your average, ordinary Joe, so to speak, that is they believe that was a good match for Kamala Harris, who of course comes from San Francisco. And they've really built on this theme so far of kind of the happy warrior is one quote, the joy of Walz, who's kind of very much a backslapper and kind of jokes a lot on the campaign trail. They've really leaned into that theme. I do wonder though if the Biden campaign, if they don't beat Trump in Pennsylvania, there's going to be a lot of second guessing. Just because Josh Shapiro, if you look at his approval ratings in Pennsylvania, you're talking, 62%, which is unheard of. It's hard to say he would definitely have delivered in Pennsylvania, but his name on that ticket would have been a pretty big get for the campaign. So really, you heard kind of Trump and Republicans, or the Republicans, kind of breathe a sigh of relief when it wasn't the Shapiro pick this past week, and instead was Tim Walz. And Republicans, and you heard some of it on your clip earlier there, they think they can really go after Walz for being having a very liberal record as governor. They keep using the term dangerously liberal. And so you're going to hear the Trump campaign or Republicans make that line of attack over and over.
Yeah, and it's also very interesting on the first initial kickoff campaign for the full ticket. It was actually Josh Shapiro that introduced Harris, introduced Walz to the stage. So you can see he will still be a surrogate for this campaign. And it's also maybe interesting as we talk about the debates that are expected to come up, and they're likely to be in Pennsylvania, which might indicate that everyone views Pennsylvania as a key battleground state, almost the key battleground state. And of course, there's a post there from Donald Trump talking about the September 4th date, the September 10th date, the September 25th date. Of course, the September 10th date, really the only one officially locked in there on ABC. And we heard from Harris talk about time and time again the interesting split screen between Harris and Trump on that stage for the debates. How different will this debate be from that first debate with Biden and Trump?
Well, it's going to be significantly different. She's going to bring a lot more energy to the debate than Biden did, which was really, kind of across the board when you talk to people. Those first 15 minutes especially were just pretty shocking in terms of how weak Biden looked out there as a candidate. You're going to try to, Harris is going to try to approach this debate as her being a prosecutor career-wise and really laying out the case against Trump. And so, there's only very few moments in a campaign that can really tilt things one way or the other. And this debate's going to be one of those. It's going to be very significant. It's going to come really before early voting, and absentee voting really starts a lot earlier than people kind of believe. I mean, really by late September and turning the calendar in October, you're going to start getting into where ballots are being mailed out for people to vote. And so, from the Harris perspective, they go into the DNC convention this next week, and they think they can get some momentum then. And then you head into the debate. So this is going to be a real factor right before voting. And you mentioned, and you're correct, we don't know whether the other two debates will happen or not. Right now, Trump has confirmed, and he says he will go. We haven't gotten that same answer from Harris, and it'll be interesting. I think ultimately, and this is just my prediction, but they will agree to additional debates as opposed to just one. I think it would look to be a pretty weak response to only be willing to do one. But they're going to have to sort that out logistically in terms of what the Harris campaign would agree to versus what the Trump folks have.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of protocols to go through to lock those in, but so many Americans want to see the two people there on the stage, likely in Pennsylvania and also in Michigan. And my last question before I let you go here, Joey, is we're talking about it to kind of circle back. This is Biden's first interview, first sit down since deciding to not seek re-election. We have not seen really Kamala Harris answer too many questions, not sit down for an interview as well. How much pressure will there be on her over the next coming weeks if she still hasn't necessarily answered a lot of questions to kind of be in front of the media, to answer some of the pressing questions of the day in this campaign?
Well, I think from reporters myself who follow the campaign and cover the White House, there will be a lot of pressure, and Republicans will be attacking Harris the longer she holds this out. I think the way the Harris campaign has taken it so far, right, is they sense that they have momentum over the last 2 or 3 weeks, and I think they're thinking to themselves, why would we want to risk a mistake in an interview potentially right now at this moment? She did tell reporters the other day that she will do a sit-down interview by the end of the month. Of course, that's a long period. We're only we got 20 more days left in this month, so that's not exactly soon. But yeah, I mean, the longer she has yet to really etch out, outline what her policies are on a lot of issues. We can assume that she sort of has the same policies as Biden did, being that she was running as his, obviously as his running mate. And so, but she's going to have to clarify a lot of different policy issues, particularly like in the war in Gaza right now, which remains a big issue internally within Democrats. And so that, in conjunction with an interview, is something that she's going to have to do, and it's going to have to happen pretty soon.
Yeah, this condensed time frame after Biden stepped out certainly throws a little bit of those wrinkles into it. And if you wait 20 odd days, I mean, we're only 88, 89 days until the election. That cuts it almost down to 75%. All right, Joey, thank you again. I appreciate your time. Great reporting as always for USA Today. Thanks again.
I appreciate it. You have a good day.
All right, thanks so much. All right, let's continue on here on Live Now from Fox. Great conversation there with Joey Garrison. I also want to put up maybe a little bit more of his reporting talking about the fact that Kamala Harris has yet to really hold a press conference. He said in a post, she's not smart enough to do a news conference. This, Trump said of Harris, and I'm sorry, we need smart people to lead the country. All right, we're following all of this here on Live Now from Fox. A live look there in Washington, D.C. at the White House, just about 4 o'clock on the East Coast. We'll get to more top headlines coming up after this.